Hello, English learners, and welcome. I'm your host, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Excited to chat about English learning today.
Let's face it, when you're learning English, it can sometimes feel, well, like you're walking on eggshells, right? Every time you open your mouth, there's that little worry. Am I going to get it wrong?
Yeah, that fear is real for so many learners.
But what if we flip that idea,
Yeah.
like totally on its head?
Okay.
What if those very mistakes you're trying so hard to avoid are actually your secret weapon?
Ooh, interesting. Secret weapon. I like that.
Yeah. So today we're diving deep into why mistakes aren't just okay, but absolutely essential if you want to become a confident English speaker.
Exactly. We've been looking at some material from the English Learning Podcast, and honestly, one of the most powerful takeaways is this idea that embracing your errors, it's kind of a game changer. It's about understanding that those stumbles, they're actually a key part of the whole process, you know?
Totally. And by the time we're done talking today, you'll really get why you shouldn't fear those moments when, you don't get it quite right.
Right.
We're going to explore why they're so valuable and even share some stories that might make you smile. Hopefully leave you with some real practical ways to boost your confidence as you learn.
Sounds good. So let's maybe kick things off with something we can probably all relate to. Those moments when we've made a mistake that, yeah, felt a little embarrassing at the time,
Oh, yeah.
but actually ended up teaching us a huge amount.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, I remember when I was first trying to speak Spanish, I wanted to tell my host family how excited I was about something, really trying to get that enthusiasm across.
Yeah, convey the feeling.
Right. But the word I used, well, let's just say it had a very different, much more adult meaning.
Oh, dear. That sounds like a bit of a conversation stopper.
It totally was. The room just went silent. And I had absolutely no idea why everyone was looking at me like that.
Awkward.
So awkward. It was only later, when someone, gently explained the word I'd actually used, that it clicked. It went bright red, obviously. But you know what? I have never, ever forgotten that Spanish word. It's absolutely cemented in my memory now.
That's such a perfect example, isn't it? How a mistake, even like an awkward one, can stick with you so much more effectively than just trying to memorize vocabulary from a list.
Exactly.
I have a similar memory from when I was learning French. After this big meal, I wanted to say, I'm full, but instead I blurted out something that meant, I'm pregnant.
No. That's another one of those classic language learner moments. Kind of funny looking back now, isn't it? But at the time.
Mortifying. Absolutely mortifying. But just like your Spanish story, that French blunder, yeah, I will never forget it. And that's the core idea, right? These aren't failures. They're incredibly memorable experiences that actually really help us grow.
Which brings us to a really fundamental point. Making mistakes is actually a good sign when you're learning.
Yeah, it really is.
So many people feel like getting things wrong is, I don't know, something to be ashamed of. But what our sources really highlight is that making mistakes, that's solid proof that you're actually putting in the effort.
That you're trying.
Exactly, that you're actively engaging with the language.
Think about how babies learn to speak. I mean, they make all sorts of sounds right. They get the grammar completely jumbled.
All over the place.
And they mispronounce words constantly. But do we criticize them? Do we tell them off?
No, of course not.
No, we encourage them. We celebrate every little attempt, every little sound. And that's the kind of supportive environment you really need to create for yourself when you're learning English.
Be kind to yourself.
Yeah, be kind. Just like we are to babies learning to talk. It's the same process, really.
Exactly. And mistakes are like a fantastic signal that your brain is actively working. You're trying out new words. You're grappling with grammar rules.
Experimenting.
Yeah, experimenting with how to pronounce things. Every time you make a mistake and then, crucially, learn from it, it's like your brain is building new pathways.
Stronger connections.
Stronger connections for English, yeah. Think of your brain like a map, maybe. And every time you make a mistake and correct it, you're drawing a new, more accurate route on that map.
That's a great analogy. And let's be honest, if you're not making mistakes, what's probably happening?
Good question.
You're likely sticking with the English you already feel completely comfortable using, right?
Right. Playing it safe.
Playing it safe. And while that's fine for, maintaining your current level, it doesn't really push you to improve. Real growth happens when you step outside that comfort zone.
Definitely.
When you're brave enough to try saying something new, even if there's a chance, it won't come out perfectly.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. Mistakes are like a built-in feedback system.
Okay.
When someone corrects you, or even when you realize yourself, oops, I made an error there, that awareness is incredibly powerful. It shines a light on the specific areas where you need to focus your attention. So instead of seeing mistakes as setbacks, like failures, try to view them as really valuable pieces of information. They're guiding your progress through actual real-world experience.
Okay, so that makes sense. Mistakes are proof of effort. They build brain connections. They push us. So let's talk about some of the common mistakes that English learners often make.
Yeah, let's get practical.
And more importantly, what practical steps you can take to become more aware of them.
Absolutely. Okay, so one of the really common ones is with verb tenses.
Oh, yeah. Past, present, future.
Exactly. You might hear a beginner say something like, yesterday I go to the store. Hear that quite a bit.
Right. Now, using the wrong tense like that, it can actually change the whole timeline of your sentence, cause confusion.
Yeah. Yesterday I go sounds like a habit, not a past event.
Precisely. The correct way is, of course, yesterday I went to the store. This often happens with those tricky, irregular verbs.
I went, gone, eat, ate, eaten. Those ones, yeah. A great tip here is maybe create your own list of common irregular verbs.
Yeah.
Go, went, eat, ate, seesaw, stuff like that.
And practice them.
And actively practice using them in different sentences to really, solidify them in your mind.
Good idea. Another frequent area for errors is prepositions. Those little words.
Oh, the little ones. At, in, on, to.
Exactly. They're tiny but mighty. You might hear someone say, for instance, I'm good in English.
Right. I hear that sometimes.
But the more natural way, the correct way, is I'm good at English. Prepositions can be quite nuanced, can't they?
Very.
And they often don't have direct equivalents in other languages, which makes them tricky.
So what's the key there?
Well, the key is really paying attention to how native speakers use them in different situations. Lots and lots of listening practice can really help you get a feel for what sounds right.
Okay, listening. Got it. And then we have those little subject-verb agreement gremlins.
Ah, yes. He, she, it.
Exactly. A common one is hearing, he don't like coffee. That little word, don't, needs to change to doesn't when we're talking about the third person singular he, she, or it.
Right. So the correct sentence is, he doesn't like coffee. It's a small change, but it makes a big difference in clarity.
Definitely. Similarly, you might hear, she have a car, when it should be, she has a car. Same rule.
Same rule. And pronunciation is another area where learners often find challenges, and that's completely normal.
Totally normal.
Take a word like vegetable. Many learners might pronounce every single syllable like vegetable.
Right. Stretching it out.
Yeah, but native speakers often reduce that vowel sound, so it's closer to vegetable.
Vegetable. And comfortable isn't usually comfortable. It's more like comfortable. Comfortable. Wow.
These examples really highlight how just listening carefully to native English speakers can make a huge difference in your own pronunciation.
Absolutely. And maybe one more common hurdle, direct translation from your first language.
Ooh, big one.
Yeah. For example, in some languages, you might say something that translates literally to, I have 25 years to say how old you are.
Right. Common in Romance languages, for example.
Exactly. But in English, the correct way is, I am 25 years old, or just, I'm 25.
So the advice there is,
instead of trying to translate word for word, it's much more effective to focus on learning common English phrases as complete units, as chunks.
yeah, learn the whole phrase, I am X years old.
Right. And the really important thing for everyone listening to remember is that these kinds of mistakes, they're incredibly common. Universal, almost.
Every single English learner goes through these same challenges. Don't feel bad about it.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Becoming aware of them is the very first and most important step towards being able to correct them.
Okay, awareness is key. Now, let's maybe lighten things up a bit, because sometimes these mistakes can actually be really funny.
Oh yeah, they definitely can be.
And as we've seen from our sources, those humorous errors can be surprisingly educational because they tend to stick in our minds, right?
They absolutely do.
Yeah.
Like that Spanish example earlier.
Exactly. I remember one student who wanted to say she was feeling bored in class. But what actually came out was, I'm so boring in class.
Oh, no. That's a classic mix-up, isn't it?
Total classic.
Bored describes how you feel, whereas boring describes something or someone that makes other people feel bored.
Right. So the correction is, I'm bored in class. But you're right, that little slip-up, maybe a bit of shared laughter,
Yeah.
it really made the difference between those two words crystal clear for her. She never mixed them up again.
See, learning through laughter.
Exactly. I had another student who wanted to tell me that he enjoyed watching cartoons.
Okay, standard enough.
But because of a slight mispronunciation, he ended up saying, I love watching cotton every day.
Cotton.
Yeah.
Every day. I'm picturing someone staring intently at a pile of cotton balls.
Right. It was a simple case of two words sounding similar, cartoon versus cotton. But the humor in that moment, us having a little chuckle about it, really helped him to lock in the correct pronunciation.
That makes sense.
And then there was the learner who told me, with complete sincerity, I cooked my husband last night.
Wait, what? You cooked him?
Exactly. My initial reaction was a moment of surprise, to say the least, maybe a little alarm.
I can imagine.
But what she meant to say, of course, was, I cooked for my husband.
Ah, that tiny little preposition again. For.
That tiny preposition completely changed the meaning of the sentence. From caring wife to, well, something else entirely.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Prepositions strike again. That perfectly shows why, okay, while we shouldn't be afraid of making mistakes.
Right.
We definitely should learn from them. And you're so right, those errors that make us chuckle or maybe gasp in surprise.
Yeah.
They often end up being the most unforgettable lessons. And as funny as these stories are, they really highlight how these memorable errors become powerful learning tools. They prove that mistakes truly do help us master English.
So true. Okay, so we know that mistakes are normal. They're sometimes funny. But how can you, as a learner, really actively take those valuable lessons from them and use them to improve?
That's such a key question, isn't it?
Yeah.
The first step, as our sources emphasize again and again, is simply to pay attention when you make a mistake or when someone corrects you.
Don't just brush it off.
No, don't just try to forget it happened because it felt awkward. Take a moment to really notice it. Register what went wrong.
Okay. And building on that, we highly recommend the idea of keeping a mistake journal.
Ooh, tell me more.
Well, it's pretty simple. Every time you realize you've made an error, or maybe someone points one out to you, just quickly jot down what you said incorrectly, what the correct version should be.
Right.
And if you can, maybe a little note about why it was wrong, like wrong tense or needed preposition at.
That's such a practical tip, and I guess the real benefit comes from looking back at that journal regularly.
Exactly. Maybe once a week, just review it. You might start to see patterns emerging. Perhaps you consistently struggle with a particular verb tense, like the present perfect, or you always mix up in and on. Spotting those patterns allows you to focus your practice much more effectively.
Right. Focus on where you need the most help. Makes sense.
Another really effective technique is to actively repeat the corrections out loud.
Say yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't just hear the correct form, make sure you say it yourself, and maybe even repeat it several times. This helps build that correct phrasing into your muscle memory, you know?
Yeah, it makes it feel more natural the next time you need to use it. Good point.
And here's a really important one. Don't be shy about asking why when you're corrected.
Curiosity.
Curiosity is such a powerful tool for learning. Really understanding the reasoning behind the correction, the grammar rule or whatever, that will deepen your understanding much more than just memorizing the right answer.
Definitely. Deeper learning.
Absolutely. And try to build self-correction into your speaking habits.
Okay, how does that work?
Well, if you catch yourself making a mistake in the middle of a sentence, don't just ignore it and power through. Start for a second, correct yourself, and then continue.
Like, he doesn't like tea. Something like that.
Exactly like that. That self-awareness, that ability to catch and fix your own errors, it's a huge step forward in your learning. It shows you're really internalizing the rules.
Okay. And finally, once you've identified and corrected a mistake, make a conscious effort to practice using that corrected word or grammar point in new and different sentences.
Don't just leave it in the journal.
No. Don't just memorize the fix. Actively try to use it in different contexts. That's what really makes it a permanent part of your English.
Right. Think of mistakes not as roadblocks then, but more like little signposts pointing you towards fluency.
Yeah, I like that. You just need to learn how to read those signs.
Okay. So let's maybe step back now and think about the bigger picture. How can we as learners really cultivate the right mental attitude, the right mindset to truly embrace making mistakes?
That's where developing what's called a growth mindset is so important.
Growth mindset. Heard that term before.
Yeah. It's basically about remembering that learning a language is a journey, right? And like any journey, it's going to have its ups and downs, its challenges, and yes, those inevitable little stumbles along the way. Mistakes are part of the journey.
It's so easy to fall into the trap, though, of thinking that some people are just naturally good at languaging.
Oh, totally. The language gene myth.
Yeah. But what our sources really emphasize is that the biggest difference often just comes down to persistence. Keep going.
Right.
People who become successful English speakers aren't necessarily people who never make mistakes. They're the people who don't let those mistakes discourage them. They don't let them stop them from continuing to learn.
Exactly. A growth mindset is basically the belief that your abilities and your skills, including language skills, can be developed through putting in the effort, through practice, through hard work.
Okay, so it's not fixed.
It's not fixed. It's the opposite of what's called a fixed mindset, where you might think, oh, I'm just not good at English. I'll never get it.
Right. I wasn't born with it.
Exactly, that kind of thinking. So the next time you make a mistake, try reframing how you talk to yourself internally. That self-talk matters.
Okay, how?
Instead of thinking, ugh, I'm bad at English, try telling yourself, okay, I'm still learning English. Or even better, maybe something like, I made a mistake, which means I'm trying, which means I'm improving.
Shifting the perspective. Mistake learning.
Exactly. That small shift in how you think about your errors can have a really big impact on your motivation and ultimately your progress.
And it's probably worth remembering, too. Even native English speakers make mistakes all the time.
All the time. We choose the wrong word sometimes. We stumble over our grammar. We mispronounce things occasionally.
It happens to everyone.
Yeah. So if it's a natural part of language for even fluent speakers, it's definitely okay for learners.
That's really reassuring, actually.
It should be. Think of learning English as this brave and proactive thing you're doing. It really is.
Yeah.
You're opening up new opportunities, connecting with different people, actively building your future. So the next time you stumble over a word or get a grammar rule wrong, try to maybe just smile about it.
Acknowledge it.
Acknowledge it. It means you're engaged, you're learning, and you're moving forward. That's what matters.
Okay, growth mindset, be persistent, reframe mistakes. Got it. So let's get super practical again. Imagine you're in a conversation right now, and you realize you've just made a mistake. What's the best way to handle that in the moment?
Okay, great practical question. First thing, don't panic.
Easier said than done sometimes.
I know, but try.
Yeah.
It's perfectly okay to just pause for a second, take a breath. Everyone makes mistakes, remember. So there's really no need to feel overly embarrassed about it.
Okay, deep breath. What's next?
Second tip, if the mistake is maybe a little bit funny, like some of those examples we shared, don't be afraid to laugh it off. Humor can be a really great way to ease any awkwardness for you and the person you're talking to.
And it helps you remember, right?
And as we said, it can actually help you remember the correct form better because of that association with the laughter.
Okay, laugh if possible. Then what?
And right after you realize you've made an error, or as soon as you can, try to repeat the correct sentence out loud.
The self-correction thing again.
Exactly. So if you accidentally said, I go to school yesterday, immediately correct yourself by saying, I went to school yesterday. That immediate correction really helps reinforce the right way to say it for you and your listener.
Good habit. What if you're not sure what the correction is or why?
Good point. Don't hesitate to ask for clarification.
Just ask.
Yeah. If you're not completely sure why something you said was incorrect, ask the person you're talking to if it feels appropriate. Or ask your teacher, a language partner later, or even just make a note to look it up.
Right. Understanding the why.
Understanding the reason behind the mistake, as we said, will help you avoid making it again in the future. Knowledge is power here.
Okay. Any other in-the-moment tips?
Yeah, try to actively use the corrected word or grammar point in new and different situations as soon as you reasonably can.
Practice it right away.
If possible, yeah, or soon after. This helps solidify your understanding and makes it feel more natural for you to use it correctly next time. Don't just correct it and forget it. Use it.
Got it. Use the correction. And maybe one more technique. Consider recording yourself speaking English sometimes.
Ooh, like on your phone.
Yeah, just record yourself talking for a few minutes. Sometimes it can be easier to identify patterns in the mistakes you're making when you listen back to yourself, maybe more objectively than when you're in the middle of a live conversation. You catch things you didn't notice.
That's a really interesting idea. A bit scary, maybe, but useful.
Can be a little confronting, but definitely useful. And perhaps most importantly, through all of this, remember to take a moment now and then to celebrate your progress.
Acknowledge the wins.
Yes. Look back and acknowledge how far you've already come in your English learning journey. Maybe there was a phrase you couldn't say a few months ago that now comes easily to you.
Yeah,
That's growth. And it's definitely worth celebrating. Handling mistakes effectively, it's kind of a skill in itself, isn't it?
it really is.
And the more you practice these techniques, the more confident and resilient you'll become as you continue to learn.
Okay, so to kind of wrap things up here, the main message, the big takeaway we really want you to leave with today is that mistakes are not something to be feared or avoided.
Not the enemy.
Not the enemy at all.
Mm.
They are an absolutely vital, natural, and necessary part of learning English.
Mm.
Every time you stumble, it's not a step backwards. It's actually a really valuable opportunity to learn something new and move closer to fluency.
Exactly. Each mistake you make gives you that feedback, right? It highlights the specific areas where you can improve. And as we've seen, they can even be quite memorable
In a very helpful way.
in a helpful way. So we really want to encourage you, everyone listening, to embrace those moments when you don't get it quite right.
Yeah, lean into them.
Lean into them, laugh at them a little, definitely learn from them, and above all, just keep practicing. Don't let them stop you.
And we'd really love to hear from you, actually.
Yeah.
What's the funniest or maybe the most memorable English mistake you've ever made?
Yeah.
We think sharing these stories can be really encouraging for everyone else on this journey.
Definitely. Builds community.
It does. So if you're watching this, perhaps, please share your story in the comments below. Or you can send us a message on social media, wherever you happen to be following us.
And here's a little challenge for you, maybe. In your comment or your message, try saying, I'm proud of my mistakes because they help me grow.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Little affirmation.
Yeah, let's create a bit of a community around this idea of learning through experience, learning through mistakes. We do read your feedback, we promise.
We do. And with your permission, of course, we might even share some of your stories in a future deep dive. Learning together really does make this whole journey so much more rewarding, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Your voice matters, your learning journey matters, and hey, we're here to support you every step of the way.
We really are.
So thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Remember, mistakes aren't roadblocks.
They're stepping stones.
They're stepping stones. Keep learning, keep growing, and maybe most importantly, be kind to yourself throughout the process.
Definitely be kind to yourself. You've got this.
You've got this, and we're cheering you on.